A while back, I was asked in a comment how to write a novel. Since I like to answer questions from my viewers, something I intend to do quite a few videos about, I figured I'd start with this one because I've already done the research. A quick disclaimer. This is my method for writing. I'm not saying this is the only method that works, nor am I saying I follow this exactly for every book. I, like many people, am constantly finding things I want to improve on. But we all must start somewhere, and it's possible my method may work for you if you're having trouble. Take from this what you will. Now on to the meat and potatoes. Don't worry, I'll include links in the description for some of the websites you'll need. First of all, there is only one thing that truly matters when writing, and that is to write. Getting something down on paper is better than simply dreaming, scheming, or if you're like me, acting out the various parts in your head. Once written, you can edit, rewrite, or cut to your heart's content, but you need somewhere to start. Now that we've gotten the most important part out of the way, let's talk methods. If you're fairly new to writing, I'll give you the two generally accepted camps, the planners and the pantsers. This breaks down to those who want to plan out every detail of their story before putting the first paragraph to paper, and those who fly by the seat of their pants, excited to charge ahead and see where their ideas take them. Like most people, you'll probably fall somewhere in the middle of these two. I'm closer to a pantser, as I like to let my stories unfold organically. I like to let my characters act as I believe they would, rather than try to force them to do what must be done. That being said, I do have a general plan. Usually, I write the first chapter of the book as a kind of pilot. Then I get out the scroll. I usually keep large rolls of paper in my study for this purpose. They're about 18 inches wide. When I'm ready to dive into the new book, I'll stretch out a fresh 8-foot length of paper across the wall. Then I pull out the Sharpie, and it's time to place my start and my end, and then fill in loosely the events I have planned. I put them in the rough order I believe they'll happen. I also leave space for when I have a new idea, or if I'm writing something new that needs to be resolved, or in case I forget something in my first run-through. This is the loosest of outlines, but since I see it every day, it helps me keep the broad strokes in mind. It also reminds me of what's to come and remember what is past. This isn't the only place I keep information. Often I'll write biographies from my characters. Depending on the story, the biography can include anything from their appearance to experience, or even things the characters don't know about themselves. These are usually about a page, maybe 2 pages at most. And these are like the outline on the wall. They are simply there for reference and can be updated as you go along. It's a good place to store your thoughts on who these characters are and how they think. This is also a good thing to reference when rereading your first draft to keep your characters consistent. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Lastly, before I start writing, I make a rules file. This is just something to help me remember some of the more complicated details about the world. Most of these may never make it into the book. It's just stuff for me to remember as the author. This isn't always necessary. If your book is based on the real world or a subject you're very well versed in, you can omit this step entirely. I get the feeling a lot of my viewers with writing aspirations are going for fantasy or sci-fi. If so, I believe a rules file can save you a lot of headache. Now that we've gotten some of the pre-writing done, it's time to start on the writing. You'll find there's a lot of not writing involved in being an author. So now you have a rough idea of where you're going and how you'll get there. I find it best to set myself a minimum writing goal every day. Usually this is just 2 to 4 pages. Some people will go with a word count or a number of minutes. What's most important here is an amount that you can comfortably finish. This is a very personal thing. Don't set yourself goals you can't achieve because you will aim for failure every time. 2 to 4 pages usually takes me anywhere from 30 minutes to maybe 2 hours at most. Usually to get myself started, I read from the beginning of the chapter that I'm on, and continue writing when I reach where I left off to put myself back in the proper train of thought. This first time through is going to be rough. You will repeat yourself, use wrong words, misspell things, use the wrong character in the wrong scene, leave out important details, and every other mistake it is possible to make while writing. It's important to remember this is your first draft and it's going to be rough. The first draft will always be your worst draft. While this method works, it can be slow. Like many things, books take far longer to make than consume. That being said, there will be times when you'll be inspired to write far more in a single sitting, like when you get to that scene that really made this whole book why you wanted to write it. This might sound odd to those who don't write, but it probably sounds on point to those who do. There are people out there who can crank out a first draft very quickly. Remember, it doesn't matter how fast someone else finishes their first draft. Their book isn't your book. Their experience is not your experience. And all work will vary, and you will never be slower than when you first start writing. Once you've finished your first draft, it's time for every author's favorite part of writing, revision. I can't say this enough. Please, please, please do not publish your first draft. I have put several books down after reading the first page because it was obvious they didn't revise their books after the first draft. There are a number of people out there who think once they've got the first draft done, they can send it to an editor and simply have it published. Yes, an editor will edit your first draft. If you publish it though, I can promise I will never read it or review it. Revising and editing are a lot like cleaning your bathroom. The only time people will notice is when you don't do it. So what will you be revising for? Well, everything. You will need to check your continuity. You will need to make sure you didn't repeat yourself, that your characters are consistent and where they need to be. You'll need to check the language your characters use. If things are in the proper order, checking for plot holes or strengthening your prose. You might not have to check for all of these if you're not as pedantic as I am. Or you may want to check for more things if you're more pedantic than I am. Usually, you'll want to go over your work a few times before you let another pair of eyes look at it, and I encourage you to check for one thing at a time for each revision. Once you've done all these revisions, it's time for an alpha reader. Just a note, not everyone uses alpha readers. This isn't an editor. This is someone who reads your book for obvious glaring errors you may be too close to see, like if you left something out or a scene repeats itself, or obvious copyright infringement issues. I find that alpha readers are harder to find than beta readers, because what they're getting is a book in the raw. They're going to have the second worst reading experience of your book. The first will be your own as you question why you decided to do this sometime around your second or third revision. Again, this is just a check for major errors. Once it's been alpha read, now it's time to revise all over again. Here's where you will polish, cut, and edit as much as you possibly can. The best way I've found to do this is to read your story aloud and cut. I keep a Word document that is just words to look for to murder. Things like suddenly, just, like, and about 20 adverbs. There are other things I search out too. Like if I changed a character's name, I want to make sure I've gone through and expunged all the old ones. This is where your rules file and character bios really come in handy. This can also help you with things like spelling if your characters have complicated names. It may also help to keep a notes file on things you're unhappy with. In my case, it's usually to remind me where I need to show and not tell. Once you're completely sick of looking at your manuscript and you've questioned why you thought you could even write a book in the first place, it's time for the real test. Beta readers. So remember when I said alpha readers are hard to get? Well, beta readers beat them in one regard. You need a lot more beta readers. So what's a good number? Well, if you're just starting out, you want to get as many as you can. Beta readers are a tricky thing. What you need here is honesty. That being said, you're probably going to need to be somewhat familiar with the person if you're going to get them to beta read. There are professionals out there who will do it for money. There are two important things to remember. 1. No feedback will be 100% objective. A beta reader will either be close to you in some way or someone you're paying. Yes, this will affect their opinion. 2. Even a biased opinion can help as long as they're honest with you. Almost all feedback is worth something. Remember to thank people who read your work and let you know their thoughts, because this is the only way we as authors can truly improve. Make sure you get as much feedback as you can from your beta readers. I usually give them a printed copy and tell them to feel free to write what they want in the copy. You can also ask them questions when they're finished. Do not interrupt them when they're talking. Do not try to correct them or explain what you wanted to show. You need to know what they took from your work, and you want to know if what you intended is coming across. But you can never ask that question. If you try to correct them, you will taint their feedback, or worse, you will get them to agree with you out of fear of alienation. Giving feedback is hard for most people. It's nearly impossible when the person is standing right there. It's even worse if they're hostile and correcting you on what you should have taken from their work. Once you have all the feedback, it's time for more revising. You get to decide if you want to change anything based on the feedback you just received. It's important to not get disheartened at this stage. A lot of people take critique hard. Some people even see it as an attack. Remember, you're taking what's in your head and attempting to present it to the world in a way they'll understand. This is a skill that takes time, dedication, and practice to master. There is no shame in getting help. There is no shame in making mistakes. There is no shame in reading books on how to do it from people who have done it before you and spending time to get your book where you want it to be. Once you finish this round of revisions, you have two options. The first is to have another round of new beta readers. I would only advise this if you needed to make some major corrections. Something hopefully the alpha reader helped you avoid. The second is to send it to an editor for that final polish. It's important to note there are several kinds of editors and edits. If you're confident in your prose and structure, you can simply get a proofread, and that won't cost you very much. If you're a little less sure, you can go for a line edit where they'll go over your sentences as well. This is a bit more expensive, and by a bit, I mean about twice as much. Lastly, if you feel completely hopeless and you have a spare few grand lying around, you can hire a developmental editor. This is basically a second, more experienced author who will go over your story with a fine-tooth comb and work with you to correct the problems with your story and prose through their own knowledge and experience. A developmental editor is something I'd consider a bit extravagant for most authors, but it's a good option if you have the time and money. It's the benefit of having someone more experienced walk you through what to do. This is not something you have to do every time. Most people who hire a developmental editor only do so for the first, possibly the second book. Then they start using a line editor or even just a proofreader. You'll have to determine what edit you need based on your feedback and budget. It also helps to remember what you want out of this. Once you get your book back from the editor, it's important to give it that final read-through to make sure you're satisfied with the end product. Now that your work is polished, you probably think you're good to go. My friend, you have drastically underestimated how much not writing you have left to do. Now it's time for all the other bits that go into making a book. You'll have to find yourself some cover art. Don't worry, there's a lot of very hungry artists out there who will gladly take your money and draw you whatever you want. Then you have to get your front and back matter together and get your book formatted. This consists of your copyright page, your contact information, about the author page, a call to action at the end of the book where they can find you and news on future books, links to your website, social medias, mailing lists, YouTube channel, and whatever else you're trying to push to get loyal readers. With the formalities done, your cover made, and your front and back matter taken care of, you might think you're ready to publish. Well, as a matter of fact, you are. Most independent authors publish through Amazon. The process is fairly easy, and there are countless videos out there that'll show you how to go through Kindle Direct Publishing, Amazon's publishing arm. So I'm not going to go into the particulars here. There are also about a dozen other places you can publish your book. Outside of Amazon, you'll need ISBNs and possibly someone to make the physical copies if you want more than an ebook. Amazon will make physical copies for you, and they will give you an ASIN, which is their own in-house equivalent of an ISBN. For getting physical copies, there are nearly countless options, and here I have a warning. Look out for vanity publishers. Almost everyone has a dream to one day write a book. Some unscrupulous people heard this and decided there was money to be made in scamming would-be authors into buying 1,000 copies of their own book with subpar production values. I can't give you a comprehensive list, but there is some stuff that can help, one of which I'll include in the description. Here's a few things to look out for. The company claims to be a big publisher, but wants you to front a lot of money to get your book published. If a publishing house wants your book, they will pay you, not the other way around. The company's website is full of testimonials and not the books they sell. Publishing your first book is an emotional time, and vanity publishers know it. They will do their best to appeal to your emotions because they know that's the best path to your wallet. True publishing houses usually don't care about your emotions. They're there to sell books. The simplest thing I can tell you to do is Google any company you're suspicious about. Never give money to a publisher, and always do your due diligence. If you really want to try your luck with the big publishing houses, I advise you to look for a literary agent. This is someone who professionally sells novels to publishers for authors. To do this, you'll need to practice writing a query letter. Querying agents is a long process in itself and can take years. I encourage everyone to start off indie. So why should you start off indie? Firstly, it will encourage you to learn about the industry and how things work. Your first book will probably be your worst book, and you're also starting off with no fans or notoriety. You'll probably have to build these up before a big publishing house will even touch your work. Publishing houses look for what will sell. In decades past, this meant your work had to be solid, your story had to be interesting, and your subject matter had to be not too offensive. Today it usually means you already have a following, or you're marketable for something other than your skill and work. Even if your book is picked up by a big publishing house, you'll probably have to do most of your own advertising anyway, so there's little point unless you're big enough to make them sit up and do the promotion. So let's talk about money. Most writers have dreams of going professional, living off the royalties of their work, content to never return to their old day jobs. The author who can live comfortably off their writing is a rare writer indeed. You'll see author tubers running classes on credentials such as, "I make X every year on my writing, and you can find out how if you take my class for $200-ish." There's a lot of people out there making good livings off their writing, if you include the revenue from their classes and videos. Context and perspective are important. Something all authors must come to terms with is they may never make a profit on what they're doing. Even if our work becomes famous, we may not live to see it. You need to find something else to take from your writing, because despite what the fly-by-night media on the internet may say, writing a book is not an easy way to make quick money. Almost everywhere you look in the writing community, you'll find authors complaining about how bad they are at promotion. Writing is an introverted task, and sales are the height of extroversion. Sadly, in writing, the cream does not rise to the top. I've read far too many Amazon bestsellers that were at best unreadable and at worst literary crimes. Don't believe that all books get on bestseller lists because they're good. Don't let this dissuade you from writing the best book you can. Promotion is just another skill to master. Having a good book will help you tremendously as it will make your promotion work a lot easier. Food that tastes good requires less work to sell than indigestible slop. That being said, there's no accounting for taste. And you won't have to look far to find those who denounce anything popular as not true writing. It's a sad fact that the most popular genre of books on Amazon is romance. Trashy romance novels make money, even when most are just palette swaps of the same book. In every profession, there are those who will look for the quickest route to success, and if money is all you're after, that is a path you can travel. I'm not sure I see the point in becoming a writer just to turn it into a job like the one most of us are trying so desperately to leave with writing. It all comes down to what you want out of being an author. It can be anything from a hobby you sink your free time into, an obsession to tell the best story you can, or a possible 9-to-5 like any other job you'd find on Indeed. But hopefully you'll have some idea of where to start if you didn't before. And if you did, maybe you got some new ideas that will help you along. Personally, I just want to tell fun stories and discuss the things I've read. Some may call me a hobbyist, but I honestly don't care. The important thing about hobbies is doing something you enjoy. And if that's the worst thing people can say about me, then life's pretty good. Good luck, everyone.